Less than 1 week to go until the NFL Draft, one of the most exciting events on the NFL calendar. Thank you for joining us inside our NDTV studios. Paul Farrington, Michael Manning, Robert Ziggy Ziegler, and John Maher joining you for this special mock draft edition of Shamrock Sports. We'll be covering the entire first round, rotating picks, telling you who your favorite team will be drafting on draft night. So, without further ado, Michael Manning and the Jacksonville Jaguars, you are on the clock.
Well, this is going to be an easy selection for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I believe they'll be selecting Trevor Lawrence, quarterback out of Clemson. He's been the unanimous first pick overall for most of this draft and throughout most of the previous year. For a lot of reasons, he's got great football IQ, phenomenal arm strength. He can move the pocket, and he can use his legs to get downfield. There's not a whole lot of weaknesses here, and he's the most highly touted quarterback out of college since Andrew Luck in 2012. I mean, you can see in this highlight package, he's got it all. The only trouble spot might be a little overthrow here and there, especially early in games, but I think he's going to be a new face of Jacksonville for years to come, and I look for him to lead the locker room as soon as he gets there down in Florida.
And there's no way that this pick is anyone other than Trevor Lawrence, right, John?
I don't see it. Crazier things have happened, but I don't see it.
Trevor Lawrence has won games. He won a championship when he was a freshman. It's difficult to imagine. I mean, you've got a proven winner right in front of you. He was the #1 recruit. It's tough to imagine them taking anyone else. This is probably the only sure thing in the draft.
Well, I think one person who could also be close to a sure thing is going to come up next with the New York Jets here. And so with the #2 pick in the NFL draft, I have the New York Jets taking Zach Wilson, quarterback from BYU. Great accuracy on this kid. He has a beautiful touch on the deep ball, as you can see right here. He's a spontaneous player, able to create plays. He's often able to get outside the pocket and make throws on the run, throw with various arm angles. Just a kid that you want to have on your team. He has zip on his passes. A fun prospect to watch. I would say the most exciting prospect in the draft. Similar in some ways to Patrick Mahomes. I don't want to get too carried away and say he's a Patrick Mahomes replica, but the guy is going to be fun, and I think the Jets finally get someone at QB.
I think he's got a little Kyler Murray in him as well. He's a little bit bigger. I think he's about 6'3", so he's got some size that I didn't actually realize he had until running through the tape, but I think he can do big things.
There's something to be said for a quarterback who can throw off platform. If the offensive line breaks down on a play, if you're going up against a team with good edge rushers, it's really nice to have a quarterback who can just make a play no matter what. And Zach Wilson, he makes more than anyone else some throws that are just impossible. It shouldn't be possible. The guy can throw off platform like no one else. It's ridiculous.
And one of the main concerns, though, with Zach Wilson is the competition he faced. Boise State, Coastal Carolina, those are really the best teams he played all season. And when Coastal Carolina is your toughest competition, it's certainly going to raise some eyebrows. But I say overall, this is a pretty nice pick for the New York Jets.
And with the #3 overall pick, courtesy of Bill O'Brien in his infinite wisdom, I have San Francisco selecting Justin Fields, quarterback from Ohio State. And so I think Jimmy Garoppolo has really been on the way out in San Francisco ever since he missed that game-winning go route. But guess what? Justin Fields isn't going to miss that. Look at this throw here. I mean, I think he's so accurate. Of the big 5 quarterbacks, he was the most accurate of all of them, including under pressure. I mean, he was tough as nails in that Clemson game, showed an incredible level of preparation, and there's just so much to be excited about. And what I want to say is that I think the top 3 quarterbacks are a lot closer than people realize, and Fields would have a case to go as #1 overall any other year.
There's a lot of chatter that San Francisco could be thinking about taking Mac Jones. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. In my view, the people who say that don't really know what they're talking about. But in any case, Justin Fields just seems like the quarterback with more upside. He's got crazy athleticism.
Yeah, a lot of media recently has been downplaying Fields' abilities, but I can't see that anywhere on film. He's got the intangibles, he's got the mental IQ, and he's got the great ability to read the defense as well.
John, you talked about the heart in the Clemson game, suffering the rib injury, and pushed through and beat Trevor Lawrence and the Clemson Tigers. They really slaughtered them that game. I just love what I see from Fields.
I've never seen anything like that. I didn't think he was coming back to the game, but
he's the type of guy who can put the team on his back for sure.
Yeah. So you say no chance they take Mac Jones?
I wouldn't.
There's always a chance. Anything can happen.
And that would move us on to you, Ziggy, with the Atlanta Falcons.
So the Atlanta Falcons are in a pretty interesting situation this draft, but I believe that they're going to be selecting Kyle Pitts, tight end out of Florida. Kyle Pitts is unlike any tight end pretty much we've ever seen. His athleticism is absolutely ridiculous. You could put him at receiver and it works. He makes unbelievable catches. You can see him burn soon-to-be NFL draft pick corners. There's nothing like this guy. He's got great hands, and he's a serviceable blocker. He's not the best blocker we've ever seen, but he's got heart. He puts effort, and he'll get in the way.
And Ziggy, what do you think separates Kyle Pitts from Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle? Because it seems that he's now certainly the #1 receiving threat on the draft boards.
So there's a couple things. The Atlanta Falcons are set at receiver. They don't really need a new receiver now. But importantly, Kyle Pitts just plays a different position. Every year there's going to be a wide receiver that comes along, but Kyle Pitts is pretty much the only elite talent this draft that has size in addition to speed, in addition to hands. His size is going to be an absolute nightmare for NFL defensive coordinators to scheme against.
Now, while Kyle Pitts is a phenomenal talent at the tight end position, I do think that Atlanta might move back here just because they have a lot of problems with their cap. And while he's a phenomenal talent, I could see Atlanta moving back.
And that would bring us then to the #5 pick with the Cincinnati Bengals, Mike.
Well, we're going to go back to that receiving talent. That's a lot of it in this draft. We're going to have the Cincinnati Bengals select Jamar Chase, wide receiver out of LSU. He's a great talent that didn't play this past year, opted out. Joe Burrow has lobbied for him heavily, former teammate at LSU. There's a big debate here that we had between Sewell and Chase, but I think that Burrow's lobbying for him will prevail, and I think that the Bengals end up taking him. He's great, can create great separation on the field, great hands. He's only 6 feet, but he can play much bigger than he is, as you see in these highlights. So
certainly here the debate's going to be between Jalen Waddle and Jamar Chase, you think? Or I personally think it would be between Chase and Penei Sewell.
Yeah, I concur. But I think Joe Burrow wants his quarterback, or his wide receiver back with him in the NFL, and I think that'll prevail.
And importantly, when we're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line, they have bigger weaknesses at guard than at tackle. So certainly it hurts to pass up on a talent like Sewell, but it's not as bad as it could be. Their offensive line improved in the second half of the year. And when you have a chance to reunite an elite quarterback with someone you know they have a great connection with, it's just impossible to pass up, in my view.
And you can reliably fill that interior line in the later rounds anyways.
Yeah, and you mentioned that they brought in a left tackle, Riley Reef, so that the outside of the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line, it's okay for now. That'll move us on to the 6th pick with the Miami Dolphins, and with that pick, I had them selecting Jalen Waddle, wide receiver from Alabama. And I tell you guys, I love Jalen Waddle, the athleticism this guy has. Sure, he's a little undersized, but he tracks the ball well. He can make contested catches. You'll see coming up here the control of speed that he has. Shifting, the ability to shift gears is unbelievable, and that's how he gets open a lot of the times on his routes. You just see this guy's a special athlete who can absolutely contribute right away in the return game. Dynamic returner for Alabama, averaging 19.3 yards per punt return, 26.8 yards per kickoff return. Jalen Waddle is the complete package to me.
Yeah, my main concern is injury. He was out for a large portion of the end of this season. He came back in the championship game and had only a little bit of an impact in the game. So I think if he's able to stay healthy, he'll be able to do great things in the NFL.
And it is worth noting his route running skills are still developing. The kinds of athleticism and speed differences he's able to take advantage of in college, certainly they will transfer to the NFL, but it won't be as big of a difference. So he's going to have to continue to develop those strengths in order to really dominate at the next level.
And anytime we hear comparisons of a receiver to Tyreek Hill, I mean, you can't help but think that the Dolphins are going to be, and we can also hook up Tua with his former receiver. Like, there's a lot here to like for the Dolphins.
And unlike most Tyreek Hill comparisons, Jalen Waddle has the hands to go with it. Some guys like Henry Ruggs haven't necessarily panned out because they're really one-dimensional. Jalen Waddle has a lot more to offer, just like Tyreek Hill does.
All right, John, let's go from Miami up to Detroit now. You with the 7th pick.
Yeah, to me, this is an easy one. There's a clear best player on the board, and I have them taking Penei Sewell, offensive tackle from Oregon. And you're going to see tape of him just destroying edge rushers. And you should remember that he's only 19 years old in all of these clips. And one thing that just blew me away was his athleticism. He really favors the hug technique and pass protection, and sometimes he's a bit too aggressive with his hands. And even when somebody, should have him dead to rights, they beat him on technique. His feet and his strength are just so great that he can recover anyways. And he gave up 1 sack in the entire 2019 season.
Is there any concern, John, with him sitting out this past season?
No. I mean, I totally respect it as a business decision. I get not wanting to take any chances with COVID, and that should not give you any hesitation to take him.
And plus, the Pac-12 was a particularly poor league at handling this. They said they weren't ever going to play football. Players opted out. Then suddenly they changed their mind. There was a lot going on. If there is one weakness in Sewell, it's that his arms are a little bit smaller than you'd want from a tackle. There's something like 33 and a half instead of 34 inches. But I don't think that's too big of a deal. It's just something to keep an eye on.
And even when the other guy gets into his chest first, he still wins.
Yeah, no, he's an excellent prospect. And moving on to pick 8 now, Ziggy, quarterbacks are still on the board here for the Carolina Panthers. I know Sam Darnold's in town. What are you going to do?
I'm going to choose to protect Sam Darnold. I believe the Carolina Panthers will select Rashawn Slater, offensive tackle out of Northwestern. The difference between him and Sewell isn't quite as big as people think, I believe. He's a guy who really dominates. What you're seeing here are clips from just one game, but it's against Chase Young, who has already turned into one of the premier edge rushers in the NFL. He absolutely dominated Young during this game. He didn't play during the season, but this is a guy who's been tested against the highest level of talent and turned out on top. Rashawn Slater's got great technique. His size is solid enough, and overall, I think he's pretty close to the complete package, and the Panthers are going to want to protect Darnold after sinking 3 draft picks into him.
And John, we had talked off the show about Slater compared to Sewell, and the measurables they're not as different as some people think.
They're both great players. I think it's clear Sewell's better, but Slater's awesome too.
Yeah, and he's interchangeable with guard or tackle. He can really play anywhere along the line there, so it's a great pick for Carolina. But it's interesting that you choose Ziggy there to continue to build around Sam Darnold now as opposed to taking the quarterback. At 9 now, though, Michael, with the Denver Broncos, what do you got?
Yeah, I think they're going to take a quarterback here in Trey Lance out of North Dakota State. We haven't seen a whole lot of Trey Lance on film. He only played 1 game this previous season in 2020, but he's done phenomenal things. He's got the intangibles, he's got the size, he's got the mobility, and he can run down the field with his feet. He's a 2-time FCS championship winner. And, my main concern is that we just haven't seen him play that much, and he hasn't played that top FBS talent that a lot of these other quarterbacks have played against. So if you're concerned with Zach Wilson in terms of playing competition, I think Trey Lance might have some problems here as well, but I think he's got the intangibles and can definitely develop into a starting QB.
My concern is accuracy. I know of the big 5 quarterbacks, he had the lowest accuracy of all of them. What are your concerns with that?
Well, he did complete nearly 67% of his passes, and he had 28 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in his redshirt freshman year. I think that, it's not, again, as great. He doesn't play as great a competition in this second-tier college league, but I'm not that concerned. I think he can be able to work on it as well.
Lance is just an interesting prospect. We've really never seen someone like him, a quarterback who's got all the physical traits, seems to have a good enough arm, seems to have the leadership, but just hasn't played football, either at a high level or really much football at all.
It really comes down to whether or not the Broncos are willing to take a chance on him with the lack of tape.
Yeah, John, so you were questioning the pick a little bit. Is Lance the pick you would make here?
I do think so. You need somebody with a big arm if you're going to draft a quarterback in Denver, because you need a guy that could, cut the ball 40 yards downfield in a blizzard, and Lance has that kind of arm talent.
All right, and that'll move me on to pick 10, and I'll sit here as Jerry Jones, the captain of Jerry World. I'm going to take Patrick Surtain, the second cornerback out of Alabama here. There's NFL bloodlines with Surtain. His father, Patrick, an 11-year player, 3-time Pro Bowler. As you can hear, we have some live footage from him playing right now. A tall frame at 6'2". He's has athletic feet and never panics. You can see right here, he intercepts the pass, but he's great at judging plays and making reads. But one thing that's fun about Patrick Surtain is you don't actually see him too often because no one throws his way.
Yeah, I know. When Notre Dame played him in the college football playoffs, we didn't throw to him nearly as much, or if at all, because we were just avoiding him. People don't throw to his side of the field at all. So there's not a whole lot of tape on him just because people don't throw at him or in his direction at all.
Do we say number 1 cornerback on the board for sure here?
I think it's pretty clear because not only does he have all of these competencies that we've seen, he comes from a real NFL bloodline. Patrick Surtain the first, if you've ever played NFL Street, the guy was an absolute monster. He spent his whole life being trained in how to be an elite cornerback. He showed up in Alabama. Anytime the ball came his way, he made the offense regret it. It's tough to see someone else going when you've got someone as complete as Surtain.
I think Farley could have been looked at here, but due to his back injuries, I think he was falling a little bit lower in the draft, making Surtain the obvious number 1 option.
All right, that'll move us on to the New York Giants. And John, who are you taking?
Yeah, I have the Giants taking Devontae Smith, wide receiver from Alabama. For better or for worse, New York has decided that they're going to roll with Daniel Jones for another year, and the story of this offseason has been building the best supporting cast they can around him on offense. And, Devontae Smith, he's the first wide receiver to win the Heisman since 1991, which is incredible. And in my opinion, the only reason he even falls this far is because people are concerned about his size. He's only 6 feet tall, 166 pounds, but he can play. He's physical with contested catches. There's so much to love about him as a receiver.
I know a lot of Giants fans would say they're upset with this pick here, but how can you be upset when you have Saquon Barkley, Kenny Galladay now, and
now
Devontae Smith? I mean, it's going to be really tough to stop the Giants. There are reports that Dave Gettleman has fallen in love with Devontae Smith, and how can you blame him? The guy is just electrifying.
And comparisons are being made a little bit to Hollywood Brown. Not to say they're the same sort of player, but it's possible for guys once they hit the NFL to gain 10, 15 pounds. Devontae Smith, even though Alabama wasn't totally honest about his size, it won't take too much to move him up to a level that NFL teams would consider sustainable. I think if teams pass on him because of their size, other GMs are going to be very excited to get this Heisman talent.
Yeah, and of the big 3 wide receivers, he's the only one who really played for the majority of the season, and he proved to everybody how talented he is and how valuable he can be at the next level.
I mean, that national championship game performance, it was unbelievable. Unbelievable. If he stays in that game, he might put up 400 yards or something.
Yeah.
All right,
Ziggy,
the often disgruntled Philadelphia Eagles fans, go ahead, make them happy.
I feel bad for who the Eagles are going to draft because by history, this means he's going to be a bust. But I have the Philadelphia Eagles taking J.C. Horn, cornerback out of South Carolina. The dude's a ball hawk. There's no way around it. He got, I believe, 3 interceptions in one game against Bo Nix and Auburn. He makes lots of plays. He breaks up lots of passes. You can see there he makes incredibly athletic plays. He keeps his eyes on the ball. The Philadelphia Eagles desperately need a playmaker on defense. He can even shut down the guy we're just talking about, Devontae Smith. There's a lot to love here. Darius Slay is not going to be able to get it done in Philadelphia. I believe J.C. Horn could be a really nice
the last second by J.C. Horn.
It's something we should talk about, too. His resume was insane over the last 2 years. I mean, just the list of guys that he had to guard is second to none.
And, Philadelphia could be looking for a receiver here, but with the top 3 gone, Ziggy, I think that's a nice pick. It's always fun this time of year to watch now for me the video of the Vikings organization when Philadelphia selected Jalen Reagor last year, and the Vikings just laughing with the Justin Jefferson pass. I don't think Philadelphia fans will be as unhappy with this selection, though, Ziggy.
Probably not, but it's the Eagles.
It's the Eagles.
It's the Eagles fans.
They throw snowballs at Santa Claus. So.
Yeah, you can never expect anything with them.
All right, Michael, with pick 13 here for our own Kieran Cantwell backstage, who are you giving to the Los Angeles Chargers?
Yeah, I think the LA Chargers, improved their offensive line here by picking Christian Darrisaw, an offensive tackle out of Virginia Tech. He's got a lot of the intangibles. He was second-team All-American, first-team All-ACC this past year. He's got great composure. He's got a huge frame at 6'5", 314, and he's got great pass protection and uses his feet very well. Some weaknesses, I think he needs to just get a little bit more aggressive. Hopefully, his NFL offensive line coach can bring that out of him because he really relies on his athleticism quite frequently. And, if he gets that anger inside of him, gets physical on the offensive line and uses his hands, I think he can be, effective right away.
Yeah, I think this is a great pick for the Chargers. They desperately need an offensive line. Look what happened with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. You have to protect your young quarterbacks, and Justin Herbert he just needs that. Darrisaw, tons of upside. Could be the best left tackle in the draft when all said and done. He has that kind of potential.
He could be. If I'm watching the real NFL draft for this, we didn't do any trades, but if Penei Sewell starts to slip just like he did in this one, I could easily see the Chargers making a move to go up and get him. But it's pretty much inconceivable to me that they do not take a left tackle here. It's a huge need. They've got their quarterback. They've got their receiving threats. It's just too important.
And I think he was effective in college, but I think there's still some room for improvement, and I think he's going to be able to step up on that next stage.
And before we make this selection here, I will be putting on my hat and acting as Rick Spielman for the next few moments here. So with the 14th pick in the NFL draft, I have the Minnesota Vikings selecting Elijah Vera Tucker, the offensive tackle or offensive guard, you could say, from USC. Again, the versatility this guy provides is great. Watch him get to the second level here, making blocks, clearing the lane for his running back. He has great balance. He squares away in an agile blocker with strong hands. I really like Elijah Vera Tucker here for the Vikings just because they have struggled so much lately with their offensive line. I mean, it is just porous all across the board. And Kirk Cousins needs some protection because he's not as bad as people say. I know that you guys don't like Kirk, but if you don't have any time to throw the ball, how are you going to be any good?
Elijah Vera Tucker is also just the type of offensive lineman the Vikings like to get. Their running scheme requires offensive linemen who are athletic, who can get to the second level, just like you talked about, Paul. He's got the legs to be able to make moves. He's got the arms. He's got the strength. I think this is a pretty good pick, though. I do believe he profiles much more as an interior offensive lineman than a guy who's going to be able to make it as a tackle.
But he does have the flexibility for where the Vikings need. They've got a lot of holes in that offensive line, Paul.
Yeah,
but I think he's got the flexibility. Can play outside, more likely to play inside. But if they need the position on the outside, I think he's going to be able to fill it.
Since I'm Rick Spielman for another couple minutes here, I really do think that you kick Ezra Cleveland out to left tackle, slide in Vera Tucker to offensive guard, and you probably have yourself a decent young O-line that you could develop.
As a Vikings fan, are you okay with this pick, Paul?
I'm thrilled. I'm tired of taking cornerbacks in the first round. So with that, I say goodbye to my time as Rick Spielman. And now we move on to pick 15, John Maher, selecting for his very own New England Patriots.
Yeah, here I have the Patriots taking Mac Jones, quarterback from Alabama. Paul, I did not write this script. I just have to sit here and justify your nonsense. So let's talk about the positives. Mac Jones' quarterback rating under pressure was phenomenal. He posted 78.3 quarterback rating when pressured, which in the last decade was second only to Joe Burrow of quarterbacks selected in the first round. And he really, really shined in the deep passing game. And, that poise under pressure, the touch on the deep ball, those aren't things that you can find easily. And, I think it's just too good of an opportunity for New England to pass up.
As a fellow Patriots fan, I actually enjoy this pick a little bit more than John does. I think if Josh McDaniels wants to go back and live a little bit more on the Tom Brady era style of play here, I think Mac Jones is a great selection. They play with Cam Newton, more of a running style quarterback, and he didn't do that great last season. So I think Mac Jones, having him as a backup at the start of the season, maybe working him in towards the end, I think he might be able to carry a New England team that's needs some improvement at the quarterback position.
A fair bit is made out of Mac Jones' lack of athleticism. It's not quite as bad as people say. You can run bootleg plays with him.
Well,
he can make fair throws on the run. He can occasionally get out of the pocket.
He
he's not a
moves
statue.
so well in the pocket too.
Yes, he's not a stationary quarterback.
He's not Kyle Trask.
Now, John, if you're upset with this pick, who would you consider taking as opposed to Jones?
Maybe linebacker.
Go linebacker, Micah Parsons, or someone on the board?
I'd like it. Yeah.
Well, we got this for you right here, John. This is for pick of the day. We know how much you love Mac, so you gave a great description for him. You really vouched for him there. Well done, John Maher. All right, let's move on. Number 16 in the Arizona Cardinals.
The Arizona Cardinals need help in the secondary on defense. I've got them picking Greg Newsome, the second cornerback out of Northwestern. Now, there are some health concerns with this guy. He's missed 3 games in both of his last seasons. But as you're going to see here, he's a cornerback who can help in the run game, who can make plays on defense, who's great at breaking up passes. He performed very well against some of the best offenses in college football. You're seeing here his hits are vicious. His ability to break up passes, he can keep up with basically any receiver. He can make incredible interceptions. This is a guy, he's got a good eye for the ball. He's got very good tackling. Pretty high floor here as long as he can stay healthy.
And he's someone who shot up draft boards recently. You're correct, Ziggy?
He's risen quite a bit. I think people have realized the cornerbacks aren't quite as deep if they've been led to believe, and Caleb Farley's second back surgery has a lot of people worried. This is one of the safer picks. You can count on him to be a solid cornerback. It just makes sense for the Cardinals, who desperately need help on defense, to go with their pretty solid offense.
So is Farley's injury the concern here? That's what's holding you off from him?
No doubt. Whether or not Caleb Farley can come back, it's unlikely he'll be 100% at the start of the season. Newsome will be.
All right, that moves us on to number 17 for the Raiders. Michael, who you got, John Gruden?
Yeah, well, the Las Vegas Raiders have a terrible defense, and they're going to look to improve that by picking Micah Parsons here, linebacker out of Penn State. I keep getting put with these guys who have not played last season. He opted out of the 2020 season, but he's got all the intangibles. Great range, raw athleticism. He's got explosive tackling capabilities. My main concern is he hasn't played in the last year, and he's, in the tape we've seen, he's super instinctive. He relies heavily on his instincts. And it's tough to work on that. You're not playing in live practice, live games. So hopefully he's able to improve on that as he transitions to the NFL. But I think the Raiders will pounce on him here if he's still available at 17.
Yeah, I think John Gruden is jumping around the room if Micah Parsons is there at 17. He's a stud player. John, do you have some thoughts on him?
No, he's great. I think it's a really, really good pick for Vegas.
And it's the Raiders. We know that the Raiders don't really care much about character concerns at all. The only reason Micah Parsons is falling so low is because there's various character concerns. He was named in a hazing lawsuit. At his pro day, he seemed very unapologetic. But, he's got a lot of talent. Even though he hasn't played, everyone can see it. And this isn't a draft with many standout linebackers. He has a very good chance to be the best.
And hopefully John Gruden doesn't show us his his draft board during the draft again this year.
And with no incredibly fast receivers to take here, I like the pick of defense, Michael. That'll bring me back to the Dolphins a second time for myself. And with the 18th pick, I have Miami taking edge rusher Kwity Paye from Michigan. He's absolutely one of the best athletes in this entire draft, guys. You can see excellent use of hands to swipe away blockers. Right here, take a look at the motor on him. He does not quit. One of the captains of the Wolverines, and you can see right here why. The guy is the heart and soul of the defense. Just one of my favorite players to watch throughout the season. He launches out of his stance quick. He's able to get around the left tackles fairly often. Some concerns with him is that he doesn't have the deepest repertoire of rush moves, but he's someone that I think you can really mold into being a solid, capable defensive end.
Yeah, I think he's definitely got some great upside here, working with some of those higher-level guys in the NFL, learn from others in terms of their defensive moves to get off the line, but I think he's got a great upside.
Miami, they've got the cornerbacks. They have a lot of talent on defense. They've got the interior D-line covered, but they need help in the pass rush. They were 29th in the NFL last year in pressuring quarterbacks. If they can fix that, this is a team to be scared of. So it makes a lot of sense that they're going for Kwity Paye here.
So, Ziggy, let me ask you a question real quick about the Dolphins. Now that they have Jalen Waddle, they have Kwity Paye, what are we thinking about their chances of competing in the AFC East with Buffalo? And perhaps New England now with Mac Jones.
They have a great chance. They won 10 games last year as it was, and then, filling some needs on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and Will Fuller comes in too. I love this. I love this draft so far for the Dolphins.
It's just going to be important for the Dolphins that Tua Tagovailoa continues to make steps forward. Some people in the Dolphins building aren't convinced he can. If he doesn't, it's going to be difficult. But if he can do what some of the coaches in Miami think he can, sky's the limit.
All right, and that will move us to pick 19 for the Washington football team. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I have Washington taking a linebacker, Notre Dame's Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and I want to talk a bit why I like this pick so much. So Notre Dame's defense, they played base personnel against 3 and 4 wide receiver sets on 45% of defensive snaps, which is insanely high. And the reason they can get away with that is because of Owusu-Koramoah's versatility in coverage. So he played at the field side linebacker as the Sam, and that meant whenever offenses put a wide receiver into the slot, he was responsible for that receiver in man coverage. And so he was matched up with guys like Amari Rogers and managed to run step for step with them in man coverage. And in the modern NFL, where so much is based on versatility, that's a huge asset, because if you don't have to change your personnel on defense based on what the offense comes out with, that lets you disguise what you're going to run and confuse the quarterback. And to me, it's just such a great fit on a team that's building their identity around that young, talented defense.
And you mentioned Amari Rogers. We think back to that first Clemson game. It was really Owusu-Koramoah who won it on the defensive side of the ball.
Absolutely.
Think about the strip of Rogers, the touchdown off the ETN fumble. Although I will say, it bounced right into his hands, but still the awareness there. He was one of our favorite players to watch. At least speaking for myself, one of my favorite players to watch over my 4 years at Notre Dame. I think that's a great pick, John.
Pretty much every game you could count on him to make a play. He's a playmaker. There's no way around it. You can see how hard he hits. You can see he jars balls out. There was actually one particular moment when he hit someone so hard that he was called for targeting, even though it was just a shoulder tackle straight into the chest. There's nothing like this guy. He's the hardest hitter probably in this draft. There's a lot to like here.
The main concern for a lot of NFL teams is that he's a little undersized. He was able to put on 15 pounds for his pro day, and I think he ran like a 4.40. The guy's got speed, a little undersized. He might play a little bit of safety in the NFL, but I think he can play all over the field, as you talked about, with that versatility, and I'm really excited to see him on the next level.
Absolutely, and that is a question about Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, safety or linebacker. We should say he won the Butkus Award for being the nation's best linebacker, so obviously he is pretty good at the position. But speaking of Dick Butkus, Chicago Bears, Robert Ziegler, the 20th pick.
The miserable Bears, there's no quarterbacks left. They're not going to reach. They're going to select Tevin Jenkins, offensive tackle at Oklahoma State. He does not look intimidating here, right? That he's got a pretty nice face, but you look at this tape, this guy might be the most vicious person. He hits guys while they're down. He refuses to give up on plays. He shoves people to the ground. And the Bears, Weston Dell, a friend of mine, he's a big Bears fan. He knows the Bears they need toughness on the offensive line. They're a bit soft. They don't always give it their all. They need a real leader, and they really need a right tackle. Tevin Jenkins can match up against some of the better edge rushers in the NFL. He'll make them hurt, and the Bears need that kind of brutality on their offensive line.
Yeah, I'm looking for Jenkins to positively impact other members of the offensive line. As you're talking about, he's an aggressive guy, and maybe he can bring out some aggressiveness in other members of that offensive line that are already on the team.
Yeah, you need nasty along an offensive line. And, John, you and Michael are spoiled with the Patriots' offensive line for years and years. It's a struggle as a Vikings fan. For Bears fans, it has been a long, miserable path here. So I think that's a great pick, Ziggy, shoring up that line. And we'll see Nick Foles, Andy Dalton, whoever winds up taking the helm for Chicago, will certainly be happy to have a guy like Jenkins. That'll move us on to the 21st pick. And, Michael, the Indianapolis Colts, right next door.
Well, the Colts need a little bit of help on the pass rush end. I think they'll select Jalen Phillips, an edge out of Miami. He actually started out his career at UCLA out of high school, stepped away from the game after 2 years due to numerous concussions. I think he had 3. After sitting out for a year, he decided to come back, transfer to Miami, and showed us a lot this past season. He's light on his feet. He has the ability to get upfield quickly, but I think he can work a little bit on his agility after the first move. He slows down and has a tough time speeding up. And I'm just looking for a little bit more consistency. He hasn't played a whole lot. He sat out, I believe, in their last game of the season. But I think he's got the explosiveness. I think he can do great things in the NFL.
Yeah, and the concern here with Phillips is clearly it's the concussion history, sitting out a season because of injury, not COVID reasons, but because of injury. And that's caused him to slide down some draft boards. Perhaps he would have been a top 15 pick beforehand. Is there any other rusher, perhaps, Michael, that you'd be looking at? Someone like, we could be thinking of Azeez Ojulari?
Yeah, I could see it. I think the Colts are going to take a little bit of a risk here. I think he's a boom or a bust type of guy. Hopefully he can stay healthy. I really hope that even with those concussions issues in the past, he's able to stay healthy and going into the future. But I think the Colts will take him here, especially just because I think they're willing to take the risk.
All right, that'll move us on to the 22nd pick. Staying in the AFC South with the Tennessee Titans, I have them selecting Christian Barmore, the defensive tackle from Alabama. And in a fairly weak defensive tackle class, I think Barmore is actually a pretty good player here, guys. He's power in his hands. He can knock blockers off their balance. He's quick and explosive. One of the better pass-rushing defensive tackles to enter the draft of late. He can get to the quarterback, and this is a Tennessee team that really needs help along the defensive line. We saw them bring in Bud Dupree as an edge rusher there, and now they complement him with Christian Barmore. The one concern with Barmore to me, the big concern, is the desire to play, the motor he has. We've seen him in big games play really well, but sometimes, at Alabama when you're playing like Albaline Christian or whoever, it's easy to take some games off, and we don't see that consistent motor that we see on a guy like Kwity Paye. Barmore is someone who, with more focus, a little more determination there, I think can be a great player given his measurables.
There's another sort of discipline issue of him in short yardage situations. There were plenty of times when he could be drawn off sides. Just in general, a lot of his concerns are mental. He's got the physical ability. He's got a lot of the talent. He's pretty new to the position, too. I think the Tennessee Titans have a coaching staff that can help him develop.
You talked about him slacking a little bit in off games, but there is no off game in the NFL. I mean, there's no Albaline Christian in the NFL. So I think he's going to be able to be a little bit more consistent. I think he's going to have to start from the beginning of the season, but I think he's going to be able to be more consistent against better teams across the board throughout the season.
I don't know about that, Mike. I mean, 13 teams play the Jets every year? Soon to be 14.
That is fair.
How many teams play the Jaguars, the Texans? There's plenty of off games in the NFL. At least players approach it that way. There really are guys who think they're going to go into a game, take it off, and then get absolutely destroyed.
Well, speaking of the Jets, Jets. John, 23rd pick. Who we got?
Yeah, so I have the Jets taking Azeez Ojulari, edge rusher from Georgia. The lack of production at edge rusher was a huge problem for the Jets this season, in addition to the obvious problem of Adam Gase. And I think that's what they choose to address with this pick. And then something that really just something that really shocked me watching him was his bend in the pass rush angle. I mean, look at that play there. Like, that's not natural for edge rushers to be able to do that. And, I think he's going to be a great addition to that New York Jets defense.
Yeah, some real high upside there with Azeez Ojulari, one of my favorite defensive prospects in this draft. Ziggy, do you think that he might actually be the best edge rusher here?
It's certainly possible. Ojulari was the best. He was the best edge rusher in the SEC, where he had to face real offenses. Right, there were a lot of sizable opponents, very good offensive lines, and he showed up to games. He played very, very well. He had a lot of production, unlike most of the other edge rushers we're talking about in the first round. So if you want a guy with a proven track record who you think can transfer a lot of his skills from the SEC to the NFL, this is your guy.
All right, that'll take us to the 24th pick, and Ziggy, you will now take on the role of Mike Tomlin with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Who we got?
The Pittsburgh Steelers' rushing offense was putrid. They're going to take Najee Harris, running back from the Crimson Tide. There's not much to say about this guy except he is incredible. He can catch the ball. He can run the ball. He's athletic as all get out. He's a really good player, and the Steelers have so much of a need at running back. James Conner, the only serviceable running back on their team, is gone. Najee Harris is the rare combination of speed, size, and agility. He's got a lot of strength, and you were about to see a really unfortunate play that's stuck in Notre Dame
I can't believe you did it.
The hurdle. This is a guy who can jump over someone who's almost 6 feet tall. I think he might have actually been over 6 feet. That's superhuman.
Don't remind me.
Najee Harris is going to be, I think, a steal for Alabama. I think the Steelers are going to zig when other teams are zagging, take advantage of the devaluation of running backs. I think this pick could be a real difference maker as they're trying to drag the corpse of Ben Roethlisberger to a Super Bowl next year.
Now, do you think the Steelers could take ETN here, or why do you have Harris over ETN?
So I like ETN, but the thing is ETN, when blocking broke down, he had a lot of struggles. We saw Notre Dame really able to contain it. Now, Najee Harris played with an excellent offensive line, but the fact is once he gets to the outside, he makes guys miss, and when he doesn't make guys miss, he powers through them. He just has that next level agility and a little bit more strength, and I think he's about as natural a receiver. So while ETN fits better in more receiving schemes, I think Najee Harris fits really well in the ground-and-pound Steelers.
And with that, we see a fourth member of that offense for Alabama come off the board. Think about how incredible that is to have 4 of your top 24 picks in the NFL draft be quarterback, receiver, running back. It's just what a spoil of riches they have.
Yeah.
Must be nice.
Must be nice. Michael, we'll go back to you with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and hopefully this time you select a player here who has played.
Yeah, I know. Well, I will. The Jaguars I think the Jaguars will select Trevon Maher here, safety out of TCU. They need receivers. They got to help out their young QB, but there's a big drop-off in safety after Maher here. And this guy is just an athlete. He can get sideline to sideline, has speed, range, and he's a general playmaker. I'm looking for him to put on a few pounds as he enters the NFL, and he's got a little bit lack of top-end speed, but he can read the offense really well, and I think he'll be able to make big plays.
Yeah, he is a game changer in the back end, and I think he's someone that has been climbing up draft boards recently. Some mock drafts actually have him going as high as 16 or 17. Trevon Maher, an absolute stud of a ball player.
Yeah, he's got lanky arms. He's a long guy. He has the ability to get up, deflect balls, and wrap offensive players up. I think he can do big things.
Yeah, and Jacksonville would love to see him there. That'll bring us to the Cleveland Browns now, who I think would love to see Christian Barmore slide down to them, but I'm actually going to have them go with linebacker Zaven Collins out of Tulsa. This is a guy, another one of those crazy athletes in the draft, 6'5", 260, runs a 4.65. This guy can he's all over the field. You see here he can go sideline to sideline and make tackles. He's smooth hands, and he's able to make interceptions. I like Zaven Collins a lot in this draft. One thing that bothers me, it's more that he's a smooth player, as I said, and natural talent rather than explosive. So when you see Ojulari, the highlights we showed before, that's a lot of explosive talent here. You don't see that with Collins, but he's a special player still.
So Zaven Collins isn't someone many people have heard of. Why do you think he's jumping off draft boards right now? Some people have been going as high as 15 to the Patriots. What's changed? What did he prove this season?
No, this season the numbers are off the charts, and you can see from some of those highlights that we have, he's really someone who's blocked. He's blocked 2 kicks, 4 interceptions. It's a little bit that he can do everything, Ziggy. I think that's what's jumped off the page for him. Even though you're not playing the greatest competition at Tulsa, think of Khalil Mack out of Buffalo. Like, that turned out pretty well. So when you have these guys, those special athletes, they're able to do a lot.
Yeah, I think he's a do-it-all guy that the Browns will really enjoy having on their team.
And I'll move us on to the 27th pick and the Baltimore Ravens, the first of 2 picks now for the Ravens after trading with the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, so John, Baltimore.
Yeah, I have Baltimore taking Jason Owe, defensive end from Penn State. So one of the significant losses for Baltimore this offseason was Matt Judon heading to New England in free agency. And to me, the natural thing to do here is to try to replace him in the draft. And so I'm going to read you off a number here. 4.37. That was Jason Owe's 40-yard dash time at his pro day, which is elite for a wide receiver. For a defensive end, that is unheard of. And that just gives him such an explosive first step. I mean, his ability to chase down running backs in space due to that speed is incredible. And I don't know, there's just so much to like about him as a pick.
So you might wonder why I always fall into 27. I think there's 2 reasons. One, things like the 4.37 can be put in the light of it's a pro day. He may not really be that fast. And also, if he does have those physical traits, it's difficult to explain why he has 0 sacks this season. He played plenty of games. Other people at Penn State had production. He was 4th in tackles for loss on the team. You would think someone with that kind of dominance would have a lot more production.
Yeah, but you can't tell me that John Harbaugh isn't sitting there looking at an athlete like this, as John said, and just licking his lips. I mean, that is someone who you can really turn into a dominant pass rusher. Think of Danielle Hunter coming in to the Vikings, just a huge athlete, kind of one of those crazy special athletes we've been talking about, and you could mold them into the NFL style. I think that's what you're going for here, right, John, with Owe?
Yeah, and more than just a pass rusher, he was also incredible against the run.
Yeah, no, he can do a little bit of everything there along the defensive line. That brings us to the 28th pick and the New Orleans Saints. The Drew Brees era is over, Robert Ziegler. So where are you going now, Sean Payton?
The Drew Brees era is over, but I have the New Orleans Saints making a move on defense. I believe they're taking Jamin Davis, linebacker out of Kentucky. Again, someone not a lot of people have heard of. He's going up a lot of draft boards. He had an excellent workout, and importantly, he's made plenty of plays. Now, we're looking at highlights here. He blocks a kick. He gets an interception. He makes a few good tackles. But this is also, there's some negative play here to watch out for. I think Jamin Davis has a chance to be the best linebacker in the draft if he can learn how to play linebacker. He doesn't really know how to play the position. He struggles at tackling. Sometimes he struggles in coverage. But the physical traits, I mean, it's like you're looking at an Anthony Barr clone. You got 6'3", 245 pounds, speed, coverage. This is a guy with a chance to have it all, and I am confident that the New Orleans Saints can teach him how to play well.
And you think he fits in nicely with that Saints defense?
The Saints have such a need for athletic linebacker. Basically, all their linebackers are gone. They've got a fair enough front four. They've got all right corners, but what they need is someone who can make.
Marshawn Lattimore, more than all right.
Sure, but I mean, the whole thing is all right. Like, it's good. They don't need to worry about that. What they need to worry about is having someone who can stop the run, who can make great plays, who's fast and can break up runs. I think that Jamin Davis could be that guy.
And what'll be fun about this draft, as we've seen over the past couple picks, the athletes on the defensive side of the ball really pick up here around picks 20 to 30. And there's a lot of guys who they haven't developed into much, but with a little coaching, they can be special players, guys who probably, when you look back on this in 10 years, say, wow, how were they not top 15, top 10 picks? So one or two of them will probably hit. It's just a matter of which one.
I think in terms of guys with top talent, I'd like to move on to my pick at
Go ahead, Michael.
At 29 with the Green Bay Packers. I think Caleb Farley could have been up in that top 15. I have the Packers selecting Caleb Farley, a cornerback out of Virginia Tech. So great selection here. I think that there's a lot of top-end potential here. And his main concern is the injury. He had a second back surgery this previous season, but he's 6'2", 210, big guy for a cornerback. And I think he's NFL ready, assuming he can stay healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Caleb Farley, someone who would have probably been a top 15 pick. We have his highlight package up here for you now. Someone who probably would have been a top 10 or 15 pick in the draft if not for those injuries you talk about, Michael. I hate to say it as a Vikings fan, but the Packers really get a steal here. They have to be thrilled with the 29th pick to get someone with top 12 potential. And in all likelihood, it seems like he will be okay from those surgeries.
Yeah, without the previous injury history, I think he would have been my number one cornerback. I think he's got great upside. He's just an athlete. He's a playmaker. He's a baller, and I think he can do great things.
John, I see you smiling over here. Is there something about Caleb Farley?
No, you don't think they're going to go quarterback again?
I would love to see Green Bay go quarterback.
Oh, I would too.
Maybe they'll even trade up again.
I'm not a Packers fan.
Maybe they'll trade up. One thing here, though, about Green Bay is a lot of fans are going to call for a receiver and say that it's finally time to give Aaron Rodgers some more weapons around him. Michael, do you think that cornerback – we saw what happened to Kevin King in the NFC Championship game. Do you go cornerback here because of that hole?
I think they go cornerback here. I think he's a steal here at 29. I could see them go wide receiver, maybe Bateman out of Minnesota. I think that's still a little early. They can get some of those talented second-round wide receivers a little later on. So I love the pick here at cornerback.
And also, we say they need wide receiver. They still couldn't stop Devontae Adams.
No, but imagine having a Rashad Bateman-esque receiver next to him. I mean, that offense.
Does Aaron Rodgers have better than MVP season? Look, Packers fans are crybabies. This is just how it goes.
Hey, we love to hear that.
Aaron Rodgers is the kind of guy who can unlock a wide receiver. You do not need to be wasting premium picks on someone, the guy you get in the second or third round. With Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball, I could probably be an all-pro receiver. Like, he unlocks guys. Not actually. Results may vary. But this is why you don't have fans making drafts, right? Drafting a wide receiver here, I think, doesn't make sense. When you've got a guy like Caleb Farley, the chance to have two number-one corners, right, Jair Alexander and Caleb Farley there, the Green Bay could have one of the scariest secondaries in the league, make plays, help Aaron Rodgers out a lot. Here, Yeah, it's too easy because if the defense is bad, suddenly the Packers fans are going to be like, oh, why do we waste a premium pick on a wide receiver? It's such a deep wide receiver draft. We should have taken defense. You can't satisfy these people. They're whiners. Let them whine.
And we'll leave it at that with the Packers. We'll leave it at that. And I'm thrilled here. So we'll move on to the Buffalo Bills now. We teased it before, but with the 30th overall pick, I had the Buffalo Bills selecting Asante Samuel, the cornerback from Florida State. We were fortunate enough to be able to see him play this season here at Notre Dame. Guy's a great athlete. He's agile. He's very good at sticking with his receivers throughout their routes. And what I mean by that is he's often playing man-to-man coverage. Someone who's just fun to watch, fearless, steps up and can make tackles, as you see right here, forcing the fumble. One disadvantage about Samuel is his size. He's undersized at 5'10". He won't be able to bulk up too much given his frame, but if he were, 20 pounds heavier, this guy is probably going in the top 15. Another cornerback with NFL bloodlines, his father, Asante Samuel, as you guys very well know, with New England for a while. I love this pick here. I think that Buffalo gets a cornerback position they really need. And Asante Samuel is someone with a lot of upside.
Paul, you mentioned how Asante Samuel sticks with wide receivers. Actually, usually he does one better. He's very good at beating wide receivers. He's good at watching cornerbacks, and often, as we saw in those clips, the wide receiver will be nowhere near the ball, and Asante Samuel just yanks it out of the sky. He's got really great anticipation, probably, as you said, because of the bloodline. There's a lot to like
Now,
here.
one thing about Asante Samuel that's fun about him, but also a little dangerous, is that he tries to bait quarterbacks. And when you bait a quarterback, sometimes it doesn't go your way. So we saw often this year he would get beat with underneath routes. The reason for that is because he's trying to get the quarterback to make that throw. We talk about his anticipation skills. Still, though, Asante Samuel here at 30, I think that's about the right spot for him.
He'll have a very easy time baiting Cam Newton.
He probably will.
And we mentioned Jair Alexander. Asante Samuel is similar.
Only 5 foot 10.
Yeah, a lot of comparisons between Jair Alexander and Asante Samuel. So it'll be fun to see those teams, the Packers and Bills, all those late first round teams who need a cornerback. We'll see where the sorting goes. That'll move us on to pick 31, though. The Baltimore Ravens, who we said moved back up into the first round by trading Orlando Brown to the Kansas City Chiefs. John, who you got?
Yeah, so with that trade to Kansas City, Baltimore finds themselves suddenly in need of another tackle. And so I think they're going to go with Alex Leatherwood here, tackle from Alabama. And, he was a 3-year starter at Alabama. And in that entire time, he only allowed 5 sacks, which is awesome. And in addition to that, I really like this pick for Baltimore in particular because they might also have some needs to fill at guard. And Leatherwood has experience starting at guard and at tackle. He played guard in 2018, and then 2019 and 2020 he moved to tackle. But I think if you put him at either position, you're going to have a great player.
That's a great point. The versatility along the offensive line there for the Ravens, that's a great value pick for them with Leatherwood. Ziggy, I know that for a moment you were saying Liam Eichenberg from Notre Dame might be a good pick here.
Liam Eichenberg definitely could be. I love our Notre Dame guys. I'm always shouting out to them. But Liam Eichenberg, I think he's more of a sure thing than Alex Leatherwood. Eichenberg's got the size. He's got a fair bit of athletic ability. He can slot in a tackle. Leatherwood, though, has a little bit more athleticism. He's able to get upfield a little bit more. His size is a little bit lesser, but that can be overcome. It'll be interesting to see, but I think Leatherwood's a great pick for the Ravens. They could use another guy, and there's a lot to like here.
Just another example of the embarrassment of riches that Alabama had last season. I think this is the 5th or 6th guy that we have projected in the first round out of Alabama. I mean, it's just absurd.
Yeah, no, the Crimson Tide last season, we see why they were the national champions. And the Ravens here, another team like the Packers who could be tempted to take a receiver in the first round. I think here they address a more important need, a more urgent need, help Lamar Jackson out a little bit.
They run the ball.
Because you can get great receivers in the second round this year, no problem.
And with that, we move on to our final pick, the 32nd pick to the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Michael, I'm sorry that we're not giving the pick to you. We know Michael is an ex-Patriot fan, now converted Buccaneers fan, as our most. But unfortunately, Ziggy has this pick.
This was a very difficult pick, actually, because the Buccaneers don't really have any obvious weaknesses. So I've got them taking Joe. Joe who? Joe Tryon, defensive end, edge rusher out of Washington. This guy is amazing at his physical traits. Now, he hasn't played the position long. Another person who sat out this year because of the way the Pac-12 handled things. But you can just see here, he's very quick. He's explosive. And with a little bit of training, a little bit of development, learning from a guy like Jason Pierre-Paul, who's on the older side, injured a few games a year, I could definitely see him developing into the edge rusher of the future for the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers have a real luxury pick here. They can sort of pick whoever they want to develop because they barely lost anyone from a Super Bowl winning roster, and their younger players on defense are just getting better. So I think this is a place where the Buccaneers can be a little bit risky, a little bit greedy, and try and secure an edge rusher of the future rather than addressing something like a needed running back.
And think back to that Super Bowl. What won it for what won it for Tampa Bay? It was that edge rush. It was the rushing, and you see you have Pierre-Paul, Shaq Barrett, and you join Tryon now. Kansas City, too, though, they upgrade their offensive line, so, tit for tat right there. I like to pick Ziggy. I think that's a nice fit there in Tampa Bay. And with that, our draft will come to a conclusion. Real quick, we would like to thank Anthony Rio, our production manager back there, who's been putting up all the graphics. He's taking care of everything, the setup. Kieran Cantwell came in, and he helped out as well with the graphics. Ziggy put together the highlight packages. Michael John, thank you guys for incredible insight, as always. And with that, the first mock draft on Shamrock Sports has come to a conclusion. I think that is pretty much going to be pick for pick, so you don't even have to tune in on Thursday night.
No, not really. I mean, this is just a replication of the draft. People think there will be trades or action or teams moving up or down. That basically never happens in the NFL draft.
We're never wrong.
Yeah, send your bookie an email right now. I mean, put these in, put all your money on it. It's free money store.
Bring back a Paul Farrington Show classic, because we do have 3 members of the Paul Farrington Show here. Paul approved these picks, and as anyone knows of the golden rule, Paul is always right. Paul has never once been wrong. So because Paul has never
I don't know about that. It might be the rule, but it might be a broken rule.
Paul's never been wrong. This will never be wrong. This is basically the NFL draft. We know more than the GMs. None of these players bust. It's going to be a good time.
And with that, you have the end of our show here. Thanks for tuning in to the Shamrock Sports Mock Draft Special Edition. Have a good one.